54671. It is alleged that the defendant, Miguel Enrique Salguera Olivares.
September 7th, 2012. A quiet morning in the college town of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, until a 911 dispatcher picks up a call that would haunt the community for years to come.
How old is she?
She's 19.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't want to touch her, but
Listen to me. Is she breathing?
I don't know.
You need to check and see. Is she breathing?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, listen to me.
There's blood everywhere.
There's what?
There's blood everywhere.
They're laughing, arms swinging like any other college girls, carefree, alive. But one of them is walking into her final hours. She would never make it past sunrise. And the room she called her sanctuary would become a crime scene soaked in terror. Her name was Faith Danielle Hedgepeth, 19 years old, a daughter, a student, a dreamer. And by morning, a victim in one of the most disturbing murders the state had ever seen. What happened inside that room? Why did it take 9 years to find the person responsible? And what was written, by hand, on a piece of paper beside her broken body? Tonight, we step into the mystery, not with fear, but with the need to remember. Faith Hedgepeth was born in 1993, a proud member of the Halawa Saponi tribe, one of the few from her community to earn a place at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She was studying biology, hoping to one day return home as a doctor to serve her people. She carried not just ambition, but the weight of generations. Her family didn't have much. No wealth, no connections, but they had faith in faith. Her name wasn't just a name, it was a promise. Her smile could fill a room, her presence gentle, steady. She made friends easily. She helped others quietly. She dreamed loudly. Faith shared an off-campus apartment at Hawthorne at the View with a friend and fellow student, Karina Rosario. It was supposed to be a safe space, a peaceful space, a place to study, sleep, dream, and grow. But something dark would find its way in, something that would silence her forever. To those who knew her, Faith Hedgepeth wasn't just another college student. She was light. Bright-eyed and full of purpose, she approached every day with quiet determination. She studied hard, always toward a goal. But it was never just about grades. It was about giving back, about becoming the kind of woman her younger cousins could look up to. She had a laugh that made people pause, a way of leaning in, really listening when you spoke. Her friends say she made time for everyone, tutoring classmates, volunteering, encouraging others when they wanted to quit. But Faith also knew how to live. She loved music, dancing, late-night talks about dreams and heartbreak. She was young, and she embraced every moment with grace and curiosity. One friend once asked her, "Why do you always try so hard for others?" Faith just smiled. "Because one day, someone's going to need to lean on me, and I want to be ready." That was Faith, the girl who dreamed of saving lives, the girl everyone believed had time on her side, until the night came when time simply ran out. Thursday night, September 6th, 2012. It was one of those warm Carolina nights when the air feels just light enough to let your worries go. Classes had just begun at UNC. Students were still adjusting to their schedules, their roommates, the rhythm of campus life. For Faith and Karina, it was the kind of night that called for music, laughter, and letting loose. They started off like most college girls would, talking about boys, catching up on homework, maybe even discussing Faith's plans for med school. Then came the decision to head out, to Thrill nightclub, a spot popular with Chapel Hill students. Faith dressed simply, but beautifully, as always. Karina, confident and outgoing, led the way. The two shared a cab and made it to the club by late evening. Inside, the bass pulsed through the dark, crowded space. Drinks clinked, neon lights swirled across the dance floor. Faith danced, she smiled, she blended in with the crowd. But to those watching, her joy was unmistakable. Several people would later recall seeing her that night, happy, glowing, one person said. At 2:06 a.m., a security camera outside Thrill captured the two young women leaving. Karina appeared slightly unsteady. Faith, always the steady one, stayed close by her side. They arrived back at their shared apartment at Hawthorne at the View shortly before 3 a.m. What happened next would never be seen on camera. Karina would later tell investigators that she went to sleep shortly after they got home, that she was exhausted, that she remembered nothing out of the ordinary. She said Faith was alive when she drifted off, quiet, maybe texting someone, maybe writing in her notebook, something she often did late at night. The apartment was still. The only sound might have been the hum of the refrigerator. But somewhere in that silence, something shifted. What Faith didn't know, what none of them knew, was that someone else may have also been watching that night, waiting, listening, and that what began as an ordinary Thursday would, in a matter of hours, be remembered as something else entirely, the night the light went out in Faith Hedgepeth's world. Friday morning, September 7th, 2012. The light crept into the apartment through half-drawn blinds. Birds chirped softly in the distance. The world outside was waking up. Inside Unit 1501 at Hawthorne at the View, Karina Rosario slowly stirred awake. Her head pounded, maybe from the night before, maybe from something else. The apartment was quiet. Still. She glanced toward the bedroom she shared with Faith. At first she thought her roommate was still asleep. But then, something felt wrong. Faith wasn't moving. She wasn't covered properly. The room, something about it felt heavy, cold, off. Karina walked closer. And that's when she saw it. Blood. Everywhere. Across the pillow, soaked into the sheets, pooled in unnatural places. Faith lay there, unresponsive, her head turned slightly, her body lifeless. The horror of it slammed into Karina all at once. Her voice trembled as she grabbed her phone and dialed 911.
How old is she?
She's 19.
Okay.
That call came in at 11:01 a.m. By the time first responders arrived, it was already clear. Faith Hedgepeth was gone. But the scene told a story of its own. Her body showed multiple blunt force injuries to the head. The wounds were deep, violent, deliberate. Nearby, officers discovered the shattered remains of a Bacardi bottle, its jagged neck smeared with blood. There were no signs of forced entry, no smashed windows, no broken locks. Nothing was stolen. And then, there was the note, scrawled messily on a fast food takeout bag. In uneven handwriting were 5 chilling words. I'm not stupid. Jealous. The ink was fresh, the message unmistakably personal. Detectives took photos, measurements, swabs. Faith's phone, her laptop, everything became evidence. Karina, in shock, could barely form sentences. Neighbors whispered from their balconies. Yellow tape surrounded the building. The press began circling like vultures. And then was looking for Karina Fremo sheets to be dressing. The struggard neighbor of Charit's, actually geneless into the Pieth, what started as a morning like any other, had become the epicenter of a brutal crime scene. And for the first time, the question was asked. Who hated Faith Hedgepeth enough to kill her like this? The forensic pathologist arrived just past noon. Inside the dimly lit bedroom, the air hung thick with the scent of blood and the echo of something cruel. Faith Hedgepeth's body lay still, wrapped not in blankets but in silence. Her injuries told a harrowing story. The medical examiner noted multiple blunt force traumas to the head, each one more devastating than the last. Her skull was fractured, the wounds concentrated mostly on the right side. Experts later confirmed she had been struck at least 10 times. The weapon? A glass bottle, likely the same shattered Bacardi container found beside the bed. But there was more. Tests revealed evidence of sexual assault, a violation that turned the crime from brutal to monstrous. DNA samples were immediately collected from her body and the surrounding scene. Blood, skin cells, biological material. Every piece was tagged and preserved. Still, one detail unsettled investigators the most. There was no sign of forced entry, no broken window, no pried lock, no obvious struggle to get inside. Whoever had done this may not have needed to break in. They may have been invited, or worse, already known. Faith's death wasn't random. It was personal, intimate, and methodical. And whoever committed it had vanished without a trace. The first 48 hours were crucial, and investigators knew it. They combed the apartment for trace evidence. Luminol lit up blood spatter patterns invisible to the naked eye. Dozens of fingerprints were lifted. Swabs were taken from under Faith's fingernails, from the doorknobs, from the shattered bottle, and from her body. Among the most critical pieces of evidence was a single male DNA profile, found in multiple locations. On the broken Bacardi bottle, on Faith's exposed body, and in the form of bodily fluids. Whoever had done this had left a part of themselves behind. Detectives ran the sample through CODIS, the national DNA database. They waited. Nothing came back. No match. No suspect. So they expanded their efforts, interviewing roommates, friends, classmates, ex-boyfriends, bar staff, even strangers spotted near the apartment that night. Each one offered names, theories, rumors, but nothing led to a conclusive break. Then, investigators made a curious discovery. Inside Faith's bedroom, tucked inside her bag, was a notebook, a journal she'd been keeping for months. In one of the more recent entries, Faith had written about feeling uneasy about Karina's behavior, specifically her interactions with a man named Brandon Edwards, a former boyfriend of Karina, and someone Faith may have once had a relationship with as well. In the journal, Faith wrote, "I think they're seeing each other again." She lied about it. The entry was dated just days before her death. This small revelation shifted the lens of the investigation inward. Detectives began scrutinizing the people closest to Faith, including Karina Rosario herself. While she was never declared a suspect, there were questions she couldn't, or wouldn't, fully answer. Why hadn't she heard anything that night, in the same apartment? Why did she wait until 11:01 a.m. to call 911, when the scene was so obviously disturbing? And why was her behavior during the call so emotionally inconsistent? Still, no physical evidence linked Karina to the murder. She cooperated with police, gave DNA samples, and moved out shortly after. Investigators also followed up on other individuals, Brandon Edwards, friends from the nightclub, ex-boyfriends of Faith. Everyone who had contact with her that night was asked to submit DNA samples. Some refused, others complied. Dozens of samples, dozens of dead ends, and the note, "I'm not stupid, jealous." Handwriting experts tried to determine who had written it. The style was aggressive, uneven, almost as if the writer had been shaking or rushed. Still, nothing conclusive emerged. In 2016, 4 years after the murder, police tried something new. They turned to Parabon Nanolabs, a company specializing in DNA phenotyping, a technique that creates visual profiles based solely on DNA. From the sample left at the scene, they produced a composite image of what the suspect may look like. Male, likely Latino or mixed ancestry, olive skin, dark eyes, black hair. Age range, early to mid-20s at the time of the crime. The image was released publicly in 2016. But still, no tips led anywhere useful. Years passed. The case grew cold. Detectives changed. Leads went stale. But Faith's family never stopped asking. They called. They prayed. They waited. Her father, Roland Hedgepeth, once said, "Every time the phone rings, I wonder, is today the day we get justice?" And for a long time, the answer was always no. It had been 9 years, 9 birthdays without Faith, 9 Thanksgiving dinners with an empty chair, 9 years of unanswered questions and a family trapped in a quiet kind of grief. Then, in September of 2021, the phone finally rang. But this time, the voice on the other end didn't offer condolences. It offered a name. Miguel Enrique Salguero Olivares. He was 28 years old, originally from Durham, North Carolina. He had a criminal record, minor offenses, DUI, trespassing, but nothing violent. Nothing that would have put him in the spotlight. Until now. In August 2021, Miguel was arrested for an unrelated charge, and as part of routine procedure, his DNA was entered into the national database. It matched, exactly, to the DNA left on Faith Hedgepeth's body, on the bottle, and elsewhere in the apartment. Investigators moved fast. They built a quiet case, watched him, verified his movements. Then, just days before the 9th anniversary of Faith's murder, they made the arrest. Miguel was taken into custody in Durham. No struggle, No headlines, yet. Just a man in handcuffs, walking out of a modest apartment as neighbors stared from their windows. He was brought into an interrogation room. The air inside was thick. The questions came slowly. Miguel sat still, tight-lipped, arms crossed, eyes down. Detectives showed him photos, DNA results. They read him his rights. He barely spoke. At first, he denied everything. "I don't know who that is. I wasn't there. You've got the wrong person." But the DNA said otherwise. Not just one trace, multiple matches, on Faith's body, on the weapon, even on objects in the room that hadn't been publicized. Miguel began to shift in his seat. He scratched his neck, asked for water, looked away from the crime scene photos placed in front of him. But he never confessed. He didn't need to. In the eyes of the law, the evidence spoke loud enough. Detectives uncovered more. Miguel had known Corina Rosario years earlier. The two were loosely connected through mutual friends. He had been seen near the apartment complex on the night of the murder, though never officially questioned at the time. It was unclear whether Faith had known him personally, but investigators now believed he may have entered the apartment while Corina slept or shortly after she left. He was formally charged with first-degree murder and held without bond. The news broke within hours. Faith's father stood before the press, his voice steady but eyes full of fire. "My daughter didn't deserve what happened to her. And this man has taken more than he could ever give back." In the courtroom, Miguel said little. His public defender requested time. The prosecution made no deals. This wasn't going to end quietly. And while a name was finally attached to the horror, for many who loved Faith, closure remained just a word, because justice was still waiting in the wings. With Miguel Salguero Olivares in custody, prosecutors wasted no time. They began assembling a case built not on witness accounts or confessions, but on cold, undeniable evidence. The DNA match was the cornerstone, multiple samples tied directly to the scene, but there was more. Investigators retrieved location data from Miguel's cell phone, placing him near the apartment complex in the early morning hours of September 7, 2012. GPS metadata, tower pings, and old digital records began drawing a map of his movements that night. Several acquaintances confirmed he'd known Corina Rosario, Faith's roommate. Some recalled unsettling comments he made in the past. Piece by piece, a timeline was reconstructed, not perfect, but powerful. Faith's family, for the first time in nearly a decade, sat in a courtroom and watched a man face charges for her murder. Her father, Roland, clutched a folded photo of his daughter the entire hearing. He didn't speak to the cameras. He didn't have to. The wheels of justice, long frozen, had begun to turn. A trial was coming. And this time, it wouldn't end in silence. Faith Hedgepeth never got to wear the graduation gown she once dreamed of. She never walked across the stage, never received the degree she worked so hard for, never returned home to serve the community that raised her. All of that, stolen in a single, violent night. For 9 long years, her room remained untouched. Her favorite books still on the shelf, her shoes still by the door. Every birthday, her parents lit a candle. Every holiday, they set a place, waiting, hoping, grieving. And though her killer was finally unmasked, justice, real justice, is more than a name on a charge sheet. It's the space where memory and truth meet. And in that space, Faith's presence still lingers. This was more than a murder. It was the destruction of a future filled with hope, service, and light. A light that someone tried to extinguish, but couldn't. Because today, we speak her name, we tell her story. We remind the world that justice may come late, but it is never truly silent. If this story moved you, if you believe Faith's life matters beyond the headlines, share this video. Not for views, not for numbers, but because somewhere out there, another family is still waiting for their phone to ring, and someone might hold the missing piece.